All right, good morning, everyone. Chris Koss is checking his watch. It still is morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Good Morning Hudson, the membership meeting for the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau. My name is Mary Claire Olson-Potter, president of the Chamber, and I'm so pleased to welcome you here today. I am totally excited that we have Mike Max with us, all things sports. So I have like 1,000 questions, but I'll try to take one or two questions from the audience as time allows. So, I mean, who doesn't love sports, right? So we purposely picked a sports venue, so thank you to the Hudson Hockey Association for hosting us here today to be here, so we're excited. I want to recognize the sponsor of today's program, Xcel Energy. For generation, Xcel Energy's operating company, Northern States Power Wisconsin, has served customers in Wisconsin and Michigan with the energy to power their lives. This year, the company is celebrating their 100th anniversary. That is a huge accomplishment right there. With a nod to the past and an eye to the future. NSPW has its roots in several early industries, logging, gas, and light companies, and the electrical railway. But the journey began in 1923 when Northern States Power Company of Minnesota purchased the Wisconsin-Minnesota Light and Power Company, which had recently completed the Wissota Hydroelectric Project. The newly acquired company, with headquarters that moved from La Crosse to Eau Claire, was renamed Northern States Power Wisconsin on April 7, 1924. The company quickly sprang to life and within a decade transformed the great hydroelectric potential of the region by constructing a system of interconnected semi-automatic hydroelectric plants and storage reserves. Okay, I practiced that one a lot. My dad used to work for NSP and Xcel Energy, but still I had to practice that one a lot because that was a lot. By 1929, NSP Wisconsin was operating a system of 5 hydro plants on one river. About 80% of the U.S. population had electric service by the 1940s, and the consumption was twice that in the 1920s. Today, they operate 19 hydroelectric generating plants on 8 rivers in Wisconsin. As part of their diverse renewable energy portfolio, which also includes upper Midwest wind farms, solar projects, and biomass facilities. Thanks to this diverse energy mix, Wisconsin customers receive 64% carbon-free electricity. Since 2000, the company has been known as Xcel Energy and serves 265,000 electric and 120,000 natural gas customers in parts of Wisconsin and Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Xcel Energy comprises of 4 operating companies and serves 3 million electric and 2.1 million natural gas customers across 8 Midwestern and Wisconsin states. So a huge congratulations and thank you to Xcel Energy. I ask that the representatives to please stand and be recognized. Dad would always follow us around and say, you know, Mary, darkness is cheap. Darkness is cheap. Turn the lights off. Turn the lights off. So, our lunch sponsor is Steele Brothers Real Estate, Edina Realty. Owned by local real estate expert Luke Steele, Steele Brothers is a leading real estate team proudly serving the St. Croix Valley and surrounding areas for over 30 years. Luke and his team's drive, dedication, and determination have been the key factors in helping their clients reach their real estate goals. Please, I invite them to please stand and be recognized. I also want to recognize Pete Foster and his team from Pedro's Pizza Lounge for providing this fabulous lunch today. There are menus back there. If you haven't had a chance to check out the new Pizza Lounge, I encourage you to do that. In fact, I'm going there tonight, so there you go. And also a special thank you to the Hudson Hockey Association for providing a venue for us again today. This is a fabulous building that you've had, and we are so thrilled to continue to have the partnership and all the groups that you bring in here for all the hockey tournaments on the 2 sheets of ice that you have. So a round of applause for all of our sponsors. you too could be a sponsor of an upcoming program. So I know some of you are thinking about that right now. So as you think about that, please see me following today's event and I'll get you all signed up. There's a number of upcoming events listed on your agenda that I just want to highlight a few of them. On Tuesday, June 11th, we have Kurt Bauer. He's the president and CEO of Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. This is going to be a great business roundtable conversation. And so that'll be Tuesday, June 11th at noon at Valley Companies. Do we have any golfers in the room? We have our annual golf outing coming up. On June 24th, we'll be teeing off at 11:30, and we will be at the St. Croix National Golf and Event Center. Let's do lunch. How many of you have lunch during the day? Right? Let's meet at lunch. So this is a new program that we're kicking off. It's going to be a monthly lunch where we just gather. You order your lunch, you pay for your own lunch, but we have an opportunity to connect and network with other chamber members. So we're going to rotate different restaurants. We have fabulous restaurants in this area. So on June 26th at noon, we will meet at Bennett's Chop and Rail House. So look for that. It's going to be consistently always on the fourth Wednesday of every month. So we invite you just to come and connect and meet with other chamber members. And then also our Leadership Hudson program is now accepting applications. That is our 9-month educational program. We have several alumni in the room today. If you have any questions about that, we have brochures on the table, but lots of information on our website too. That is all the announcements that we have today. And so at this time, one of the many benefits of attending Good Morning Hudson is the opportunity to make connections. I'm going to invite you to take out 5 business cards. Hopefully you all have 5 business cards. If you don't, we have Linda from Minuteman Press who can get an order made for you. But invite you to stand up and exchange business cards, and I'll bring you back in a few minutes, and then we'll hear from Mike Max. Well, I hope you enjoyed your lunch and made some new connections today. And at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker. Mike Max started his career as an intern at WCCO, and the station hired him as a sports producer. Mike hosted Sports Connection on the Midwest Sports Channel before landing his own radio show. Today, he is the sports director and anchor for WCCO-TV. He also hosted for 24 years Sports to the Max with Mike Max on WCCO Radio. And as a commuter, former commuter, I always tried to get in my car just in time so I'd hear the start of the show, because then he had such fabulous speakers, and Sid Hartman, and I knew I got all the sports information that I needed in the whole drive home. So loved that for 24 years. Okay, I didn't listen to it for 24 years because I'm not quite that old. Anyway, but it's not about me. But anyway, I did love that show. So a true Minnesotan, he grew up in Gaylord, Minnesota, and attended Hamline University, where he demonstrated his talents on the court and in the diamond, playing basketball and baseball for the Pipers. So please join me in giving a warm Hudson welcome to Mr. Mike Max.
Thank you for having me. Every time I come out to Hudson, it seems like it got about 3,000 people bigger. It is. It's amazing what you guys are doing out here, and it's great. I work at WCCO-TV. She starts reading my bio, and I realize I'm getting old. But I love what I do, and I appreciate the people more and more every day. And I work with great people at WCCO-TV, and I don't just say that because we're number one in the ratings. I say it because we have great people, and that's why we're number one. And the longer I work, the more I realize how important that is. And the more I appreciate it, and I say that because I don't think we take time to tell each other we appreciate each other enough. I had a great uncle, 93 years old, and he's laying on his hospital bed, and he knows he's not going to leave the hospital alive. Great Uncle Ed. And sitting right next to him, right by his side, is my great aunt Edna. And as you do when you get to these moments in your life when you know that it's the end of whatever, you begin to reflect. And he was reflecting on his life, and he says, Edna, who'd have thunk it? You and I were born on the same day in the same hospital, next door neighbors. Grew up together. We're playmates. When we got to high school, romance blossomed. We decided, remember, they all told us we're done with, we decided to get married right out of high school. Our parents didn't approve, but we did it anyway. Your dad gave us the farm to run. Truth is, I didn't know what I was doing. 3 years later, the bank came and took half the farm away. Then came the Great Depression. 3 years later, the bank came and took the other half the farm away. He says, Edna, you have no idea how many days I'd come home and I'd think she's not going to be there for me. And I'd walk in the door and there you'd be in the kitchen. You'd say, don't worry about it, Ed, it'll get better tomorrow. I had 15 different jobs in the next 17 years. How many times I came home with that look and you knew that I had just lost another job. And you'd look at me and you'd say, don't worry about it, Ed, it'll get better tomorrow. And his life went on. Remember, you never even saw the Social Security checks because I was taking them right from the mailbox to the casino sometimes. And I'd come home with that look at the end of the night and you'd be waiting for me in the kitchen saying, don't worry about it, Dad. We'll be okay. It'll get better tomorrow. And then 3 years ago, they diagnosed me with a terminal disease. And it lands me here today. And you know I'm not going to leave this hospital alive. And I have been reflecting a lot, Edna, a lot over the last few days. And the only constant in my life, the only thing that has sustained me, that has been here with me for my entire life has been you. And it has not been the life that I envisioned or we envisioned. It has not been what we hoped for. It has been filled with far more frustration than elation. Far more hard times than good times. And now we get to the end of it. And I think about how difficult this journey has been. But you have been right by my side the entire time. The only person that has been right by my side the entire miserable journey through this mortal coil. He said, Edna, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. And I think that you might be bad luck. You liked that one, didn't you? You didn't even think it was funny. It just made sense to you. The ingratitude that we have for the people that should mean the most to us, right? The attitude that we don't bring to the table some days when we should. Get up every day, right? And when I get up, that's my worst time of the day because my attitude's not right. I don't know if it's because I don't get enough sleep, but I'm angry and I'm looking for enemies and I'm looking for fights and I got to talk myself out of it. I just heard a preacher preaching the other day. He says we've all got the same thing. We've got the good and we got the bad. We got an evil side and we got a good side. Well, which one's going to show up every day? He says it depends on which one you feed. Do you feed the right side or the wrong side? And in my job, I get to learn from all these people, and it's not always the people that you think. I get to see all these worthy examples of what can be, not what can't. I did this show called Life to the Max for many years in conjunction with Life Touch, and we traveled all over the country doing stories on different people. And I met this family not far from here, actually, and they told me the story about on the 4th of July, they were having a picnic, and their son, 9 years old, was complaining about his knee and how bad it hurt. Dad said, don't worry about it. Next week, we'll go into the doctor, we'll get it checked out, you'll be okay. Next week came, they went into the doctor, brought him in. He figured he maybe sprained it, maybe it strained it, maybe it'd fallen off his bike. Doctor came out 45 minutes later and said, we better sit down and talk. They did an MRI on him. From the bottom of his foot to the top of his skull, he had tumors. They had no idea. And so Mitch was admitted to the hospital that fall. They went on a tour and did all the fun things that he wanted to do because they didn't know the outcome. They put him in the hospital with the other kids in the cancer ward on the 6th floor. And it got to be Christmas time. And he and his dad are sitting in his room and he's listening to the family next door, and the family next door is having a conversation they can't help but hear. And Dad is telling the family that it's not going to be the same Christmas as it's been years past because they don't have the means. Because they too have a child that's in cancer care. And he wants to prepare them for that because it's not going to be the same Merry Christmas. And Mitch is sitting with his dad. And he says, do you hear that? And he says, yeah. He says, Dad says, don't worry about it. They'll figure it out. It's not our issue. He says, Dad, did you hear that? And he says, don't worry about it, Mitch. Mitch says, no. You had a fundraiser for me. $5,000 is in an account in my name. You told me I can do anything I want with it, right? He said, yeah, don't worry about it, Mitch. He says, well, I want to take that money out. And I want to give some of it to them and some of it to the other kids on this floor that are going through the same thing. So they went down, met with the president of the bank. Mitch explained what he wanted to do. They gave him the money. He dispersed it as a secret Santa to different kids on the floor and different families on the floor in envelopes. I'm sure eventually they figured out where it came from, but that wasn't the point. He wanted them to have the Christmas that they wanted. When they got done, he said to his dad, that's the most fun I ever had in my life. He said, promise me we can do this again next year. His dad said, I promised you, but we've also promised we'd be honest with you, and we don't know if you'll be here next year, Mitch, and you know that. And he said, I understand, Dad, but promise me you'll do it if I'm not. He said, I promise you. And he said, pinky swear? And he said, yeah, pinky swear, and they joined pinkies. Mitch passed away 3 months later. Pinky Swear is a national foundation that raises money for families in need, so that they can have a Christmas if their kids are in the hospital, so that they can pay for a hotel room if they got to go to the Twin Cities but they live in La Crosse, so that maybe they can make a payment on the car to get through that month. That's what Pinky Swear Foundation does. And I say that because I think about us, I think about you in the chamber, I think about you working, and we grind and we do all these things, and we think about what's not possible a lot, and we get destroyed by our negative thoughts. And then you think about a 9-year-old kid that says, we can do this. We can do something special with our lives. It doesn't matter how much time I got left here. What matters is my attitude. It doesn't matter what my circumstances are. What matters is how I handle my circumstances. And the longer I live, the more I realize that's what carries us through life. I sat down with the guy who played in the NBA, right? Great basketball player. And we're sitting down, and I asked him this question. I said, would you have been successful in life had it not been for basketball? And he looked back up at me and he almost said, because he's a tall guy, right? A lot of natural ability. He said, yeah, I would have been successful in life because you don't get it. He said, when I was a young kid, my parents sat me down. They said, we don't know what you're going to be, what you're going to do. But we want you to know this. Whatever it is that you decide to do with the rest of your life, remember this. Your attitude and your effort are the most important things you bring to every day. Your attitude and your effort. And here's the best news of all. You got complete control over both. The message was focused on what you can control and forget about the rest. He said, so I applied that to my life. He says, there are lots of guys that are great basketball players that I grew up with that didn't get to where I did. And people would say it's because I got this, it's because of my attitude, my effort that my parents instilled in me. That's why I got where I got. Now his name, you might have even heard of the guy, it's Michael Jordan. Maybe he is the greatest basketball player of all time. And I'm sitting there with him doing a one-on-one interview, and he's explaining to me, no, you don't get it. You think you get it, and you don't get it. It's not about the physical and the this and the that and the gifts. Yeah, you got to apply your gifts where they make sense, to be sure. But the reason he got where he got is because of attitude and effort. And that's a gift that we get, right? That we get to choose that every day. And I know it's hard, man. It's the hardest thing I do in my life is try to have a good attitude. I tend to focus on the problems and the things that I haven't solved, right? And I wish I could be more grateful every day, and I got to really talk to myself about being more thankful every day. And my guess is that maybe some of you do too. Because my guess is that most of us, if we took an inventory, feel pretty blessed in this room. In our own way. But we get this gift to choose our attitude and our effort every day. And it has nothing to do with what somebody else does to us. It has nothing to do with the stock market. It has nothing to do with COVID. It's, do we have the courage to make the decision and to empower ourselves to be the best version of ourselves? That's what I see when I see greatness in people. And then I see our young people, and you people now you're at a stage in your life where it's time to help out too. It's time to help those that are coming after you. I taught a class for the first time ever. I taught a college class this last semester at Northwestern in Roseville on sports leadership. And I'd give them pop quizzes all the time because I wanted to know where they were in their life. I wanted to know how this generation felt about it. And these are kids that are high achiever students. They're athletes. They're people that have done well. You generally come from good families, all those things. And I'd say, take your phone out, look at yourself for 1 minute. Now tell me what you see. What's the man or the woman in the mirror tell you about yourself? Well, how do you feel when you look at yourself in the mirror? And then write me 3 paragraphs on it. And I would see the insecurities and the fear that they felt. And these are high achievers and how they would only see their flaws. And these are people that have great gifts. And it made me realize what our mission is in life. We got to bring those people up. We got to let them know they're good. We got to encourage them. I did a story on these 2 kids, one from the Twin Cities. One went to Stanford and was a great baseball player. One went to Harvard and was the starting quarterback. I said to their dad, I understand these are, these are tangible things that we measure, but I said they turned out pretty good, your 2 kids. What could you tell me? As I'm a parent now with young children at the time, he said, I can tell you this. Encourage, and encourage your children. Because the world will discourage them enough. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to encourage your children too much and give them a false impression of what life is. Encourage them every chance you get, because every time they walk out the door, every time they turn on their phone, every time they see a billboard, every time somebody else is getting an award, the world's going to tell them they're not good enough. Your job is to encourage them so they believe in themselves. Because the world will take care of discouraging them. See, the fear of failure is the greatest thing, and it's the greatest motivator and the greatest hindrance that I think we have in this world. I sat down this last September. One of the top days I've probably ever had as a sports reporter. Down in Winona, Minnesota, I went down there. And I spent a day with a great Viking quarterback named Brett Favre. Oh, wait, I'm in Wisconsin, aren't I? I think he played there too, didn't he, at one time? So Brett Favre and I did an hour for charity on stage, and that was great. But I never really got to know him when he played with the Vikings, because the media was like nothing we'd ever seen. No one ever drew the media attention in this town that Brett Favre did. Not even close. The national media that wanted a piece of him, so you couldn't get close to him. But I got there early, and we ended up spending a lot of time together, and we ate dinner together, and all these things. And he was incredibly transparent on stage, off stage, about his career. And I said, Brett, you had the consecutive game streak. Why would you do that to yourself? You had to have had many times when you felt the pain and the risk of injury and you went out and played anyway. Why would you do that and jeopardize your health? And he says, you want the truth or you want the answer I'm supposed to give you? And I said, give it to me straight. He said, the reason I played every game, no matter how bad I hurt, was because I was convinced if I didn't, I'd never get my starting spot back. This was a Super Bowl champion, MVP of the NFL, filled with fear that he might not ever get his starting spot back if he didn't play one Sunday. Now that's what makes him great, but that's also what makes us paranoid, isn't it? You know, he hurt his shoulder. He went to the New York Jets, hurt his shoulder. Didn't know if he'd ever play again. Doctor did surgery on it, started feeling good. He said, I think you can play again. And he said, I knew I could play again. So my agent comes to me and he says, okay, now that you can play, where do you want to play? He said, I looked at him, I told him, anybody that plays the Green Bay Packers twice. But he's incredible. I watch him and I say, yeah, that's it, man. We all live with that. We all believe in ourselves and we live with fear that we're not good enough. We all think if somebody finds out about us, we're never going to be heard from again. But it's not the fear that gets us, it's the dealing with the fear that matters. I was doing a story it was the 200-year anniversary of the War of 1812. And we were out at Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Never forget this. Now, I don't know if you guys know about the War of 1812. I had to look it up on Wikipedia too before I went out there, so don't feel bad. The War of 1812 was when England came back and they were going to reclaim us, colonize us, take us back, the U.S., the freedom that we had obtained through the Revolutionary War in 1776, they were going to reclaim us. And so they knew they were coming, and they were coming with a regatta, and they were going to start in Canada and come down, and then they were going to come into Bar Harbor there in Baltimore and reclaim Baltimore, and in essence then that was their gateway to taking over the United States. And so they had to come up with an army, so they did. And they built it at Fort McHenry, this small place that overlooked it, and it was a ragamuffin group. It was a former slave next to a former apprentice, next to a lawyer, next to a doctor, next to an accountant, next to a teacher. They got whoever they could to volunteer for this army, and their only job was to defend the United States and freedom. And so they trained them as best they could, and sure enough, that regatta, those big ships came over from the motherland, and they came just as expected, right down the harbor. And a fight ensued. And there was cannon fire and fire all night. And there was an attorney in town there from Baltimore, and he came out at sunrise the next morning, not knowing. And he pulled out his telescope, and he looked on the embankment, and he saw what he wanted to see. A tattered and torn American flag. But the point was, it was still there. And then he went back to the city, so inspired by what he had seen, and Francis Scott Key penned the words to the national anthem. Oh, say can you see? And the flag was still there. Now, I left there, and I remember flying back. And I remember thinking to myself, this group of people that defended our country, I never knew. And I'm sure that they were afraid to fail because the stakes were high. I'm sure that fear lived in them. But that wasn't the point. They did it because they knew it was the right thing. And they won my freedom and your freedom because of it. And I owe it to them. I owe it to them to go for it. They didn't do that so I can just go through the motions. They didn't do that so we can just live off of whatever. They did it because they want us to have opportunities to do what it is we want to do, which is why you're here today. You're in the Chamber of Commerce. You're trying to make Hudson better for sure, but you're in business. They did it so that we would be in business, so that we would see a dream, so that we could live an American dream. They did that for us. And we owe that to them, that we give it our best shot. We owe it to them that we go for it. We owe it to them that we try to create the best business that we can. We owe it to them that we live our American dream. When I see great people and great teams and all those things, generally speaking, I see the same thing. It's not the aptitude or the ability, although that counts. It's that it's good people that believe in each other and like each other. And they've got the right attitude. And if you surround yourself with people like that, you get better. Just last week I did a story on Harvey Mackay, 91 years old. Best-selling author. McKay Envelope, multi-million-dollar company. Speaker throughout the world. 91 years old, still working. And so I sat down with him in his office, as I have many times. I said, Harvey, tell me what the keys are. I said, number one, you can be an optimist or you can be a pessimist. What do you want to be? You can be an optimist today or you can be a pessimist today. What do you want to be? He said, but I refuse to run around with pessimistic people. I refuse to hang out with people that are pessimistic. I'm driving over here. I'm telling you, is my Siri the only one that doesn't work? I ended up 3 miles on the other side of town, and I'm going 1820 Hanley, and it doesn't see it. It's telling me this, and then there's closed road and all these things, and I'm thinking, this is a pretty minor issue. But I'm on the verge of making it a major issue, right? Am I an optimist or am I a pessimist? And then he said, you know, Harvard just concluded an 83-year study. 83-year study at Harvard. And they were trying to figure out longevity in people that lived a long and healthy and productive life that produced happiness until as close to the end as you could. He said they found one thing. Number one, they have great relationships with other people. The people that thrive, the people that extend, the people that stay healthy, the people that feel good in their 80s and into their 90s or whatever it is before the Lord takes us, they have great personal relationships. They have people in their lives that they enjoy being around and they make each other better. That's what this is. Get to know your neighbor, man. Not just because you can do a transaction with them. That's the easy part. Hang out with these people that make you better. That you'd like to play golf with, even if there's no business deal to be done at the end of it. Every year, every summer, I go to Colorado with my high school friends. I'm the class of 83. Man, I'm going to be 60 in November. I have no idea where the last 40 years went. And I am so grateful. Because if I ever have a bad day, if I'm going through a bad time, these are the people that I'd still go back to because they're my friends and they've always been my friends. And they're the most important friends that I have. Personal relationships are more important than your professional relationships because they will be with you for your entire life. The last thing that I see with these people that do great things is they work hard. They work hard at being good professionally, and they work hard at being a good husband, a good wife, a good mother, a good father, a good whatever. They're committed to their life. I was driving out here and up at the holiday store there looking for directions, right? There's 3 boys sitting there. They couldn't have been, 10 years old. One boy says to the other 2 boys, he says, my dad is so amazing, you guys can't believe it. They go, what do you mean? We know your dad, he's not that great. He goes, no. He said he took us out to the archery range last week because he's going to go bow hunting in the fall. 40 yards away, bow and arrow, he drew the arrow back, let it fly. 6 inches before it was going to hit the target, he caught it in his bare hand after he shot it. 40 yards away. Second kid says that's nothing. Last year before the deer hunting season, my dad's got 30-yard 6. He hunts with a rifle 60 yards away. He set it up, didn't even use a scope. Shot it. 6 inches before it was going to hit the bullseye, he caught it in his teeth. The third kid says that's nothing. My dad works for the state highway department. And every day he gets off work at 5 o'clock and he's home by 4:15. Don't be one of those that gets off work at 5 o'clock and you're home by 4:15 because you can. Because you think nobody's noticing. Work hard in your life. Every time I come over here, I'm coming across that bridge and I think about one person. Sid Hartman. Because Sid had a place just on the other side of the river. Minnesota side, mind you. But he had a place, his second place was right over there, right across the river. Every time I think about that exit when I get there to Lakeland, all those things because I've been to his place so many times. And I had the great privilege of working with Sid for years. We did a TV show together that for 20 years. Did radio with him, and he was a great friend. He quit work, and last column he wrote was the night before he died when he was 100 years old. Now you got to understand what makes him amazing is he grew up on the north side of Minneapolis. His parents, first generation immigrants from Russia. His dad not present in his life. Sid started selling newspapers on the street corner to help his family get through life. He never graduated from high school. Somebody took a liking in his work ethic and he moved his way up at the Star Tribune and became the greatest sports reporter probably in the country without a high school education. He started buying real estate at a young age. Once he got into his 20s and 30s and started making a buck. I don't think he even knows how much he died with. He was so successful in that. But that didn't matter to him. The money didn't matter to him. It was what he got out of life every day. And what he proved to me was talent, whoa. Hard work, everything. Hard work is everything. He knows he didn't have the talent. He couldn't spell. He didn't have a voice made for radio. And yet he starred on the newspaper and TV. With no grammatical skills and no speaking oratory skills, he still was a star because he outworked everybody. Because he made relationships important. Because he didn't spend a lot of time feeling sorry for himself. Because he felt so blessed, the life that he never envisioned that he'd get, that he had. That was my friend Sid Hartman. And I think that's the same opportunity that I get when I'm sitting feeling sorry for myself. Or thinking I deserve a bigger piece of the pie, and why not be all those things I think about Sid. Man, he didn't have time for that because it was on to the next. Again, I made my class read this and do a report on it, but Theodore Roosevelt wrote a speech. I think about this often when I think about you people out here today. It's called The Man in the Arena. And I'll paraphrase it, but it goes like this, and I'll close it with this before I go to questions. It is not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with blood and sweat and tears, who knows the great effort that it takes to achieve success, who at best achieves an ultimate goal, who at worst at least fails while daring greatly, so that his or her place may never be with those cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat. That know neither victory nor defeat. That's why I like being here today, because I'm with a whole bunch of people that you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but I'll be damned if you're getting out of the game. Stay in the game and stay in the fight. Thank you very much for having me out here today. I will be happy to take any questions.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I heard Don Shelby last night at a banquet, and you kind of feel like I'm on a Channel 4 roll here.
Don Shelby's one of my mentors, man, one of the greatest mentors I have in life.
Of course, yeah. But I'll throw a question at you just to get you rolling here right off the. And first of all, very wonderful your remarks. I'm sure everybody was moved by your.
Thank you. Did you get that for cable TV?
I'll give you a raise back up. In any event, to change the subject a little bit and not be as serious here, how would you grade P.J. Fleck in his career with the Gophers, and how you project the future there? And can you give him a grade and
Go for football?
P.J. Fleck.
Yeah, P.J. Fleck and Go for Football in general to the program. Yeah, it's one of the most difficult things. I was at the Vikings yesterday, ran to Brett Bielema. He's coach at Illinois. I said, I know why you come here. Because you just feel good. Because you win every time you come to Minnesota, whether you're coaching Wisconsin or Illinois, you always win when you're here. PJ took the team, and he's got a lot of really good stuff. and he's taken the team, and they got as far as they could go the 1 year, I think, the 11-2 year was unbelievable. And then they've been kind of up and down in the Big Ten since then. Now, the question for him, I just don't know how all this NIL and transfer portal, I don't think I think it's so difficult right now. And so we have to recalibrate on how we judge programs, because programs are going to be judged by who can bring the talent in, and the talent's going to be based on how much money you got to give them. So I don't think that you can give Minnesota a grade until Minnesota gets up to speed maybe with some of the other schools, NIL and financially. Now, for 3 years this has been going on. And so I think it's really difficult. I think he's one of those, like I said, his stuff is really good. Like one of the things that he does is on Mondays or Sundays, it doesn't matter when they come back, is he has his staff put together all the mistakes made in the NFL that were correctable. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. And they play them. They go, now you don't have to make that mistake. Because you can see right here what happens if you make that mistake. You fumble the football or you throw an interception. So I just don't know anymore how to judge Minnesota sports, University of Minnesota sports, because I don't know what this game for any of them looked like. To try to keep up with, to try to compete with. The numbers are so staggering what some kids are getting to go to other schools that I don't even know how to judge it anymore. Used to, but I don't anymore. But I think they'll be competitive this year, but I don't know. They're like a lot of teams. They're one of those teams, if they won 9 games, you'd go, yeah, they could do that. If they won 5 games, you'd go, yeah. But they'll be in the games because they play defense and they run the ball. And, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't turn the ball over much. That's one of his trademarks. So that keeps you in games. And then it's just a question of what happens in the fourth quarter a lot, And that's tough to tell right now.
Goes along with that, my question, on the NIL, if you were to summarize up how it works, how would you describe, as business owners, you want to sponsor a local golfer or something to do something, how does the funding go in to help pay for some of this?
It is so wild, wild west right now.
Anywhere?
That, they're just the infancy stages of trying to get their arms around this thing. So let's say that you want to put a college golfer on a billboard with your company's logo. Now they have what they call Dinky Town Athletics, run by a really good guy, Derek Burns, who used to play football. They're a really smart guy too. So you can go to him and say, this is our idea, and then you can work with him on that, right? You can also go directly to the student athlete. Because there's no rules. What the ruling was is there's no rules. And so now they're talking about a salary cap, where they would allocate X amount of dollars to all the teams spread out. And I don't know then if everybody gets the same cut in all sports or what it would be. But then in addition to that, you'll still be able to seek NIL deals on your own. What they're trying to eliminate, part of it is you can't get 150 grand just to show up at a birthday party one time but what's happening now, and I could talk all day about this because it's so complicated. The areas that have, Memphis basketball, has the guy's got a big stake in FedEx, so he's able, all legitimately, to go out and help finance, to support the program how he wants. And they just got Dane Danger, a local kid from Minnesota that was playing in Illinois for his senior year. And men's basketball right now is the most out of control. I shouldn't even say that because the kids are getting the money and good for them. But I say that because most programs look and they go, hey, if I can get 2 more players, I can be really good. So they go buy 2 more players. And they say the most overpaid player right now through NIL is the number 8 player on a men's basketball team. Because they thought he could be a number 2 guy, and he's number 8, but now you're paying him 300 grand, okay? Well, now, next year, maybe you don't want to pay him 300 grand. He's got no leverage either. Now you go, well, I got somebody better than you, so I'm going to pay you 100 if you want to stay. It's that crazy. There's no contracts. There's no, there's no deals. There's nothing that.
There's nothing overseeing the control. It's just wow.
Well, because really, it's what they're doing is they're no different than you. What business are you in?
golf simulator, golf, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so if you find a way to keep your course open in November and nobody else can, and you've got a heating system that nobody else has, and because of that, you make an extra $1 million, because you get to play golf in November only at your course. That's fair. So the kids it's the same thing for the kids now. They're no different than you are, is what I'm saying. So there's no rules for you as to how you run your golf course. You want to have snowblowers out there and play go ahead, right? If you can do it. They can't punish you for that. So if kids can find a way to make the money, but it is men's basketball that has been the most affected. The other part of that is, generally speaking with NIL, you're talking about 3 to 5% of the kids that are really benefiting from it. Most of the kids, they can't make an impact for you if you put them on the billboard. Right? There's not enough. And here in this market, that's what hurts the University of Minnesota is, do you want to go sign a spokesman? Okay. Who do you want? Justin Jefferson or a Gopher? Right? So you're competing against a much different landscape here because of professional sports. Now there's some places in Texas Tech, I was talking to a guy, and he says they got all that oil money down there, no pro sports, perfect to pay teams. Then you get other problems, like a team says, well, our offensive line isn't good enough. So they go out and they buy a bunch of offensive linemen as freshmen. So the freshmen come in, but they can't beat out the seniors. But they're getting paid the money and the seniors aren't. How do you think the seniors feel about that? So you got all kinds of antennas to this thing that, you can just see it, right? All the problems. The University of Colorado brought Deion Sanders and all his players. Now maybe they'll get it right this year. And certainly he has brought in who knows how much more money than they ever would have had in the athletic department just by his presence. But it didn't work immediately. So will people keep investing in NIL if he's not winning? That's your other question, right? Now it gets even more, I don't want to use up all the time on it, but marketers are now looking at, generally speaking, the way that kids can make money is they're influencers on social media. So if they've got a lot of followers and whatever it is, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is that they do, and they say, look at, man, I eat at this pizza place, I wear these shoes, whatever it is. Now the studies are getting much more intricate than that, and they're trying to figure out, for example, one of the studies I know that they're doing is girls will buy from women that tell them to buy. High school boys won't from men. So that market is different than what you would think. So I was told that Southern California, there's high school girls on track team down there that made a ton of money on it because they told you, they showed you, and their consumer base believed in it and purchased based on that. So you go, well, that's different than what I thought, Obviously the Caitlin Clark, and they said we're trying to figure out what sports and what people, because all they care about as businesses is, will you move the needle, right? Will you get people to buy our product? And they still haven't figured that out either. So it's an interesting study.
Maxie, two quick things. How did, I haven't read Wikipedia, how did we know the enemy was coming in the War of 1812? How did they get that intel back in that day? Do you have any idea?
Look, I just went to the ceremony where the band was playing, it all made sense to me.
Second question, is Dallas Turner gonna be Micah Parsons' number 2? Is that legit?
Dallas Turner, the Vikings linebacker. Yeah, he comes, I met his mom not long ago, and she had been to Minnesota and spent a summer here because her sister was working as an executive at Honeywell. And I only say that because really impressive family. And a smart kid, which means a smart football player. Smart football players are everything, And so I think he's got a chance to be pretty good. The question is, in the first year, that's a tough position to play because you're reacting and you're thinking at the same time. But they think he's got a big upside. I just don't know if it'll happen right away. But they like what they see for a number of different, and he played at Alabama, he's already been in the NFL,
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, thanks for being here today. You mentioned Caitlin Clark. With the Lynx having a good start to the year, with the Minnesota PWL winning the Walker, how has women's sports changed your role in the reporting role?
Well, we now have, it's amazing to me in the last 4 years, okay? Minnesota United built Allianz, right? Big time deal, right? The Pro Women's Hockey League, which there'd been pro hockey, but nobody had ever done it right. This one did it right. got the right TV contract, et cetera, et cetera. Caitlin Clark it wasn't a one-off, but it was the Big Ten tournament that she really controlled here in Minneapolis, you know. But then you add to that St. Thomas is now Division I. The Minnesota Twins, St. Paul Saints are no longer the St. Paul Saints as we know them. There's a AAA team, so there's guys like Royce Lewis that are rehabbing down there. And so I can't believe how many decisions we have to make about how to fill a sportscast, because there's so many good sports out there right now. I mean, this market is unbelievable, and the interest level in it. Women's sports, men's sports, everything. You know, we were down at the state softball tournament yesterday, and that place is electric and on fire. You know, the high school sports, and they don't get lost in the shuffle in this town either. High school sports and the MIAC. So it's created the best problems you could have as a sports reporter, sports director in my case, and that is that we can never cover any team like we'd like, really, because we get 3 minutes of 6, 3 minutes of 10. But we will never, we should never, ever have a day where we don't have great content. So for me, it's follow the story, right? Tell me what stories are, tell me what the consumers want, and then give that to them. And so we now have this menu that is just huge. And we use some things like ratings is big to us, you know. The Twins have strong ratings. You know, the Timberwolves were off the charts. The top 17 rated local programs in our market last year were the 17 Minnesota Vikings football games. Not even close. The Minnesota Vikings will have 6 times as many viewers as the Wild or the Timberwolves in any game or the Twins. I mean, it's that big. It's huge. So you better get the Vikings right. That's where we start, right? And then you work from there. When I leave here, I'll go over to the Vikings. The 3rd straight day I've been over there, and it's the off season, right? So that's how it's changed. Is that we've just got so many options and so many different, to me, stories available to us. So it's the best time ever to cover sports in Minnesota. It's difficult because you're always trying to get it right. And then when a team goes on a roll like the Timberwolves, I traveled with them to Denver and Dallas. And, I mean, this state goes off the charts when you have a team like that because we're so starved for winning, you know?
Thank you.
So, 2 questions. Who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings? The first question.
Yep.
And then second question, this NIL, I mean, I heard that Payne from university went over, and wherever he is now, he's like getting $500,000 a week, and he gets a new Mercedes every year. I mean, what are we teaching the student athletes about loyalty to your team and to your coaches?
Well,
and to your
2 good questions. First of all, my guess is that the Vikings might start with Sam Darnold and then keep an eye on JJ as he goes through it, but they just don't want to rush him. He's got, I sat down with him for a long interview. He's got a lot going for him. He went to there's an IMG school in Florida, which is kind of like going to a academy for football, and then Michigan. He played for Jim Harbaugh, obviously. So he's been with some of the brightest minds at that position, and a national championship. So they know what the future looks like, or they hope they know what the future looks like. And he's incredibly intelligent, and handles himself. I couldn't believe at his press conference. His first press conference, he'd been Minnesota Viking for a day, and he must rattle off 5 or 6 names of teammates. Now, think about this. He didn't know what team he was going to. And he's mentioning offensive linemen, and not just Justin Jefferson. He's talking about Garrett Bradbury and Ryan O'Neal, and he's not screwing it up. That's pretty sharp. The NIL, what is it teaching kids? See, I have a different view on that. You can say, what's the NIL teaching kids if they can just jump ship, transfer portal, go for the money, whatever, okay? I get that. But number one, most of these kids, Farrell Payne, Dane Danger, they're not going to play in the NBA. There's all kinds of great players that are never going to make it to the NBA, which is where the huge money is, Phoenix Suns had 3 guys making about $50 million a year. So they got to get what they can get while they can get it. The other part of that is, that I find disingenuous when coaches talk about it, is the same coach who doesn't like the transfer portal and the NIL will take somebody from the transfer portal if he thinks he can make his team this much better. And the kid that was developing, that went through his freshman and sophomore year, he just got put on the bench when he thought he was going to start as a junior. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for coaches who want to play it both ways, you know? Oh yeah, we're a development program, great. Well then why'd you sign that kid instead of the kid that you were developing? Because you thought he was better. So I don't have a lot of sympathy, and I don't begrudge the kids anything. Because truthfully, most of these kids, and I know a lot of them because I covered them in high school, this is their one payday in terms of sports. And they may do something to scale it back some. But, you know, and let me just say something else about that, because you were talking about Caitlin Clark. Because it worked out so that the Big Ten tournament was at Target Center, and Iowa was drivable distance for their fan base, right? So I went down to the tournament, right, to cover it. And then you stop and you think, how much did Minneapolis benefit from Iowa being in here? And Iowa without Caitlin Clark's just another Big Ten team. Iowa with Caitlin Clark is sold out, right? How much money did she bring into this city? Now, she's not getting any of that directly, right? But I looked at the hotels, I looked at the lines of Iowa fans, and they were all going out to eat. Now, they're from Iowa, so they probably went to Subway or McDonald's, but I mean, edit that out just in case, okay? But my point is, when I looked at it that way, which I never really had before, I mean, it's irrefutable. She brought the tournament, right? So she deserves something, you know. Now she's going to be obviously at the top end and all of that. But if I'm her, I'm going, wait a sec. If I'm not getting the money, who is? It looks like I'm making a lot of money for a lot of other people here. And there's no question, and she's a great example of that, because that was a case where she was the tournament, you know. So I don't have a problem with that. I think the problems are going to be more for these kids when they, like I said, when they get $300,000 to go somewhere, and then there's nothing non-renewable, and the next year they're making 50, and the coach is trying to run them off because he wants somebody else, and that happens all the time.
Okay, so I'm really glad to hear that you're close personal friends with Sid Hartman. So
Yeah.
Back to the T-Wolves. What do you think about that ownership situation, and how do you think it's going to shake out?
The Timberwolves ownership situation?
Yeah.
I think Glenn Taylor will own the team. And I just, that's the way it looks like it's playing out to me. I have no other comments on that this time. That's what I think. And, you know, they're well built right now. They're well positioned. My bigger concern with them would just be, you know, you watch these teams and they go on a run like they did. And the reason that you try to win a championship so bad is you don't know next year who's going to be healthy, who's going to be injured, what other team is going to get a great draft and come out of nowhere. I mean, you look at the last couple of years, right? Denver won it last year, Milwaukee the year before. Great examples of small market teams like Minnesota that can win it. But they capitalized, and then guess what? The next year, you know, all of a sudden, a couple injuries with the Bucks, and they might get Damian Lillard, but they're not the same team, and all of a sudden they're firing their coach, and I mean, that happens a lot. But the Wolves are going to be, based on who they've got signed already, they're going to be incredibly competitive if they're healthy next year, with a chance to take that next step. So they're going to be really fun to watch, because everybody now, what the playoffs do for a town is they really take people and suck people in, so you know who the personalities are, and you know who you're a fan of. So that next year when you come back in the regular season, you already know. You maybe didn't know much about Kyle Anderson until the playoffs. You know, slow-mo and a slow shot, and all of a sudden you know about that. Or Mike Conley and how he runs the team. Now you know about that. So it's a fun transformation when you go on a run like that. And they're going to be very competitive next year.
Mike, do you have a favorite player that you followed from high school to the pros, or maybe to the business world, that over your career that sticks out to you?
Yep. The favorite player that I followed, that I got to know as a high school kid, is now 50 years old. He lives in St. Cloud. He's been in jail 4 times. His name is Prentice Perkins. He played at Minneapolis Henry. And 1989 did a story on him. He was the best player in the state, maybe, or one of the best players in the state. He went to a junior college and then got recruited to the University of Washington. At the University of Washington, he played in the Pac-12 against guys like Jason Kidd and Damon Stoudemire. It was the best of the time. He was holding his own, got kicked out of school for an incident. Came back here, played at Concordia St. Paul, got in trouble, got thrown into jail for selling drugs. Went and visited him in jail, did a story with him. He got out, was playing again in the Pro-Am, got in trouble again, thrown in jail at Lionel Lakes, went and did another story with him. And this is why I say this. First of all, he was an only child. His mother was 15 when he was born. He fooled me, as he would tell me later. He was in a gang when he was in high school, and yet he somehow was this unbelievable basketball player. And I mean, he was really special and really good, and has had this complicated life. Now he's been good and straight for a long time. Last time I was with him was in St. Cloud. We went outside to shoot an interview outside the penitentiary that he served time in. And I said, what memories do you have when you look at that? And he says, well, I can tell you one thing. I was the best basketball player in there. But here's the point. As many things, when I look at him, that are in complete conflict or contrast to the way that I was raised, I can't help but love the guy because his personality is such. And because there's a part of me that looks at him and says, I got lucky. I had two parents. I knew it right from wrong. I had no excuses. He didn't have that. And I have some sympathy for that along the way. And he really doesn't have a bad bone in his body. He just has made bad decisions to try to make quick money and to try to beat the system and all those things. And so I still talk to him once. Now that you bring it up, I should call him and see what's going on because he's always got some entertaining stories. But he is the one that stands out because I think in part because maybe part of it is it makes me think about my own life. You know, not that there haven't been several players that I covered from high school that have done really, really well. You know, but he was the one that like I said, I interviewed him in two different prisons, and every time we've done a story on him. And then he showed me what, in the north side, we were out one day on the north side of Minneapolis, and he goes, see those two kids in the corner? And it's just two kids, you know? He goes, yeah, they're waiting for the drug deal to come by. The guy that they get the drugs from is gonna come give them the drugs, and they're gonna bring it where they have to bring it. And you're going, oh, I just thought it was two kids on the corner. He goes, come on, you kidding me? He knows the way the game is played, you know? And it's been fascinating to me to see, and fascinating to me too, and this gets back a little bit to, I covered the George Floyd riots, and I ended up kind of out on the front lines for it. And so I saw a lot of things that I never would have seen, and it was the greatest educational experience in my life. But it made me look at a different world that I wasn't familiar with that I thought I was. And one of the biggest, I got a lot of takeaways from that because it was so intense. But one of my biggest takeaways is, and this applies to Hudson and it applies to Eden Prairie where I live, that I hadn't thought about. Go over to the north side of Minneapolis off of Broadway, drive around those neighborhoods, and then go to, say, Minneapolis north of Patrick Henry High School. And drive within 12 blocks of there. Now think about when the kid gets up in the morning and he's going to North or Henry High School and he lives 10 blocks away, okay? Every day he drives by what? Go see for yourself. Oh, there's the bars on that window. Oh, over here at that bus stop, 3 people are waiting to get their fentanyl. Everybody knows it. Oh yeah, that's where my cousin got shot. And now I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna have the same optimism that I have? That's what you see every day when you live on that side of town. And my kids don't see that. They see some lawn service that gets in our way when we're trying to get out of the cul-de-sac, and we think that's a problem, And they see upbeat, clean, everything, and that's what your kids see. And that has really stuck with me because I think it slowly drains you of hope if you're not careful. If you're driving by the same things every day, and those are triggers and things that remind you of how tough life is. And that was my takeaway from covering and from really studying that side of town, and that gets back to Prentice Perkins.
I'm glad you brought the George Floyd up, because I watched your coverage, which was excellent, by the way. But was that one of the stories that really had the biggest impact on you overall in your history?
The George Floyd riots?
Yeah, was there other ones that kind of stood out?
Yeah, lots of them have, but that one, because it was the perfect storm. It was COVID. There were no sports going on. Everybody was in their house pretty much. So when it happened, and I get asked about this almost every week, sometimes every day, how did I end up out there as a sports guy? They burned down the 3rd precinct on Thursday night, and I had gone home after the news, and I turned on the TV, and I go, wow, we're still on the air. What's this? And it was a camera long ways away, and the 3rd precinct's burning down. But there was no explanation because it was just people, and they were burning down the 3rd precinct. So I went in the next morning to my boss, Carrie Beatty, and I said, if this happens again, if there's unrest again, I'll be happy to go out in the street. And she said, duly noted, We didn't really think anything. We thought it was probably over, but there was a tension inside the city at that time. That night at 9:45, Friday night, they shut down 35W right over by Bobby and Steve's. And she said, are you sure you want to do this? We'll send you out there. So I went out there and did a live report, and the people all came up the embankment at once. They'd stopped the furniture trunk, and they were throwing furniture off the back end of it and burning some of it. And at one time, they all came up the embankment. And I said, where are you guys going? And they said, we're going to go take the 5th precinct down tonight. So I called backstage and said, we got to get over to the 5th precinct. And then the next 4 days were just, But it changed my life. It changed my life because I said once, I grew up wanting to be the best sports reporter in town and wanting to be the best dressed. Okay, those 2 things. I'm better known, not as a sports reporter, but for a guy that put on an old raggedy shirt and went out in the middle of the riots and covered something that wasn't sports. And I am. I mean, even at the Timberwolves playoffs, if 10 people came up to me, 8 of them want to talk about George Floyd, But it changed my life because I understood for the first time. I covered the inner city for a long time, so I knew a lot of people in the inner city. But I was always covering the star athletes. And it really changed my life because I realized how many people I didn't know. I thought I knew the city, and I didn't because I only was going to see the coach and the player. And now I see this mass number of people that don't have sports or have a lot. And I saw the suppression that went with that. And I saw the way they felt. And I saw what happens when that suppression gets removed, when you have permission to do what you want and to fight for your cause. I saw that in front of my eyes. And it was incredibly revealing to me. One of the things that has changed my life is I work in downtown Minneapolis on Nicollet Mall. And the homeless people are around there. And I used to walk by them, and once in a while I'd give them $1, depending on what kind of mood I was in, when they were panhandling. And now, ever since then, I stop and I talk to them. And I visit with them, and I get to know them. And I have some of the best conversations. And some are from Chicago and Detroit. You barely know their names. They love talking about sports. I don't know how, but they watch. Some are homeless, but they watch us on Channel 4 wherever they are because they know what we do and who we are. And so many times, because they're intelligent people that have had problems in their life for sure, but so many times I got to say, I say to myself, there by the grace of God goes me, right? And that's how it really changed my life, was to understand that I was one of those guys that said, hey, we all got access to equal this and that, and I believe that, right? I believe you go to school, anybody can change their life, anybody can, but I had a lot more help than they're going to get. They can still do it, and a lot of them do. But it's more difficult to do it if people are telling you you're not good enough every day.
Is there one last question? Yes.
It's hard to segue off this, but today our Hudson girl varsity team is headed to the sectionals.
Which sport?
Soccer, sorry. So, and I have a daughter that headed off, and I saw her, and I think they're playing this team where nobody scored against them this year, and they're like, we're probably not going to win. I'm like, honey, all you got to do is not let them score, just score 1 goal.
Why don't you bring them over? I'd have fired them out, yeah.
Any advice as a dad, get them all fired up?
My daughter played 3 sports in high school. My son plays 3 sports in high school. And my advice is, this parenting thing sucks sometimes, man. Just trying to watch a game where you have no control, and you show up and you go through this emotional roller coaster. Isn't it something?
Yeah, it is something.
I mean, you wouldn't trade it for the world. And you're so happy that your kids want to participate. But it takes you on a roll, man. Especially, you can't figure out why this happened or that happened or all those things. So as a dad, the one thing I would say is relinquish control and enjoy it, and be thankful for the fact that your daughter wants to be on a team doing something, because it'll serve her well for the rest. I'm a huge advocate that, as I tell my son every day, who's kind of a small, trying to be an overachiever, right? And I say to him, this isn't about what you do and your achievements, it's about what you learn. So when you're 26 years old and you want to have the guts to open your own New York pizza place, now I've got your attention now, you get the confidence to do it. And that's how I measure a successful high school career, because the ebb and flow and whether or not you're going to get to be the star or the starter or play is one thing, but you can extract some valuable, wonderful lessons that you can't learn anywhere else in school. You can't take an English class, a social studies class that teaches you to compete, to be intense, to like teammates, to not like teammates, to like coaches, to not like coaches. I don't think there's a better preparation for life. So my point to you is, she's already won.
And everyone has a bad day, may the Raiders shut her down today.
There you go. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, before I forget, I have our Hudson swag for you. I read that you love Christmas.
Yep.
So now you have a perfect hat to wear when
All
you
right.
come and see the 50,000 lights that we put in the park.
You put 50,000.
It's amazing.
It is 50,000. It's really true.
I believe you.
There was a big pause there, but, right, you all have seen it, right? Okay, all right, we get great sponsors. If you want to have your name in lights this year, we have opportunity for you to donate again this year. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming out and joining us. And please greet Chris and Amelia and Frank, all our friends there at CCO. We greatly appreciate that. So thank you. So thank you again to our sponsors, XL Energy. Congratulations on your 100-year anniversary. To Steel Brothers Real Estate Group, Luke and your team, thank you so much. Pete and your team for the great lunch, and the Hudson Hockey Association. We love this space and we will be back. So I look forward to seeing you at upcoming events. Thank you so much for your continued involvement and support of the Hudson Chamber, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.